There is an ancient story you've been carrying, and it was never yours. A subtle narrative, repeated through generations, whispering, "I am not enough." But that belief is nothing more than an echo of collective conditioning, not a truth about who you are. You did not come into this world to earn your worth, but to remember it. Worth is not acquired, it is intrinsic to your very existence. The pain you've walked through did not shatter you. It only burned away the excess, revealing what was already unbreakable. The fire you feel now is not destroying you, it is forging you. It consumes only what is no longer essential, what no longer resonates with your true being. What the mind calls ruin is, in truth, the very moment your new self is being shaped. The universe does not waste pain. Every tear, every loss, every silence is a code of vibrational reconstruction. And as the old self dissolves, your authentic essence begins to emerge, radiant and unmasked. You were never broken. What cracked was only the shell of the version you no longer needed to be. The essence, that silent and invincible awareness that has always witnessed everything, remained untouched. When you stop identifying with pain and begin to see it as a portal, suffering stops being punishment and becomes initiation. That is where the rebuilding begins, not as a return to what once was, but as the birth of what was always waiting to emerge. Life is not asking you for resistance, it is asking for conscious surrender. Surrender to the truth that nothing needs fixing, only remembering. You are the continuation of creation itself, and every crisis is a reminder that something greater is moving through you. There is no mistake, no delay, only refinement. And refinement does not destroy the diamond, it reveals it. You are not in ruins. You are under reconstruction. And that reconstruction is, in truth, the rebirth of your truest self. The one who always knew it was whole, even when the world tried to convince you otherwise. Now is the moment to remember, nothing was lost, only the false has dissolved. What remains is what has always been real. You, whole, luminous, unbreakable. From a young age, you were surrounded by stories that seemed like absolute truths. Stories told by voices who were also just trying to survive. Parents, teachers, religions, entire cultures telling you what it means to be good enough. Without noticing, you began carrying an identity you never chose. A collage of expectations, judgments, and comparisons that over time started to feel like you. But it wasn't. It never was. It was only the reflection of other people's wounds, stamped into your field as if they belonged to you. That story taught you that love must be earned, that mistakes equal failure, that vulnerability equals weakness. It convinced you that safety comes from control, and that authenticity costs too much. And so, little by little, the infinite being that you are squeezed itself into a reduced version, molded to fit into the world instead of expanding it. And the body, wise as always, began to feel the weight of the lie. Tense shoulders, shallow breath, a closed heart. The nervous system learned to live on alert, not because there was real danger, but out of fear of disappointing an ideal that was never yours. But there comes a moment when the soul grows tired of performing. The old script begins to crack. The lines no longer fit, the costume no longer belongs. You realize that the life you've lived until now was just rehearsal. The real play begins when you drop the inherited storyline and choose to write your own vibrational script. And that new script is not written by declarations, but by a quiet gesture, allowing yourself to be who you always were before you learned who you should be. It's the moment the body relaxes, the heart opens, and the field responds. You don't need to erase the past, only to stop identifying with it. Because what you call me is not the character, it is the author. And when the author awakens, everything can be rewritten. Before any name, before any fear, you were already light in the shape of consciousness. No trauma, no rejection, no absence could erase that, only cover it. Worth was never given to you. It came with you. It is written into the original code of your being. But along the way, you taught your body to negotiate what never needed a price, your own presence. The world screams that you must achieve something to deserve existence, a title, approval, validation. But the universe operates differently. It expands simply because you are here. A star does not earn the right to shine. A tree does not beg to bloom. Your heart does not ask permission to beat. You belong to that same rhythm. Nothing in the cosmos tries to prove its value. it simply is. Bruce Lipton showed that every cell responds to the environment you create within. When you believe you are enough, your body shifts into growth mode. When you doubt, it switches into survival mode. This is the biology of self-love, not poetry, but science. Your body literally blossoms when you remember that you are already whole. There is nothing left to achieve, only to allow. And allowing is not surrendering, it is trusting. Trusting that worth is not found in applause, but in aliveness. That recognizing yourself as sacred is not arrogance, but humility before the very force that created you. The love you seek outside has been waiting, quietly, at the center of your chest. It does not ask for credentials, redemption, or forgiveness, only presence. Innate worth is the remembrance that dissolves all illusions of lack. When you activate it, the field responds immediately. Relationships align, opportunities appear, and the weight of having to become someone dissolves. Because the universe does not reward those who run, it bows to those who remember. And when you remember who you are, everything that once felt distant begins to recognize you too. Pain arrives like an unwanted visitor, but it is always a precise messenger. It does not come to punish you, it comes to awaken you. Every loss, every disappointment, every emptiness is a disguised calling, an invitation to return more deeply to yourself. The mind interprets it as punishment. The heart, if listened to, recognizes it as a summons. For it is through the cracks that the light of consciousness enters. Suffering is the friction between who you truly are and what you still insist on holding on to. Pain appears when the soul wants to expand and the ego tries to stay in control. It burns away what is false, the masks, the inherited stories, the roles whose time has expired. It is not the fire of hell, but the sacred fire of purification. And the more you resist, the more it burns. The more you surrender, the more it transforms. Joe Dispenza says that every quantum leap requires energy, and pain is precisely that energy being released. The nervous system reconfigures, the body shifts frequency, the field adjusts. It's not destruction, it's an update. But for that to happen, you must stop running from the experience. Because avoidance reinforces the cycle. Presence ends the pattern. There is ancient wisdom in pain. It only hurts because it is clearing the path back to what is essential. It does not seek your suffering, it seeks your truth. It wants to remind you that you are vaster than your circumstances, brighter than your fears, stronger than your losses. Pain is the exact point where the human and the divine meet, the moment where the character dissolves and the true being awakens. So when it comes again, and it will because it's part of life, do not ask why me, but rather where is this leading me? That simple shift in question changes your entire vibration. Because the field does not respond to desperation, it responds to availability. And when you make yourself available to the lesson hidden within discomfort, the fire stops consuming and starts forging. Pain then fulfills its purpose. It opens the portal that leads you back home, to the place where nothing was ever missing. Fear is the boundary between what you know and what you were born to experience. It is not an enemy, it is the gatekeeper of the portal. Whenever fear appears, it is not life saying stop, but whispering this way. Because fear only shows up where expansion is near. It marks the limit of the old version of you, asking permission for the new one to emerge. The dream that calls you is not a whim, it is a frequency that already recognizes you. It vibrates on the horizon, waiting for you to cross the bridge of courage to meet it. But courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision not to let fear choose for you. The body trembles, the mind hesitates, but the heart already knows. And when the heart speaks, the entire field begins to reorganize in response. Bruce Lipton reminds us that the body lives whatever it believes to be real. When you behave as someone who trusts, even if you still feel afraid, your cells receive the new instruction. They align with the field of possibility rather than the field of threat. Fear, once a barrier, becomes fuel. And what once seemed impossible begins to feel natural, because the body learns the new language of expansion. On the other side of fear, the air is lighter. Not because challenges disappear, but because the struggle ends. You stop trying to control the wind and learn to open your wings. That's when the dream stops being a goal and becomes a memory. Something you always knew but had forgotten. The dream was never far. it was just past hesitation. The field does not punish those who feel fear, it rewards those who move through it. Every step taken toward the unknown is a vibrational declaration: I trust. And that trust has gravity. It pulls new people, new opportunities, new timelines, because fear is only the final test before reality bows, the last guardian before freedom. Life does not give you strength. It reminds you of the strength that was always there. You did not become strong because you survived. You survived because you were already strong. The difference is that now you're starting to see it. Every fall, every wound, every apparent ending did not build something new within you. It only removed what kept you from seeing what was always there. Strength is not born from the absence of vulnerability, but from within it. True power reveals itself not through resistance, but through surrender. The warrior who does not deny his exhaustion, but continues anyway, holds the wisdom of the awakened spirit. Strength is not in the roar, but in the quiet breath of someone who keeps going in the midst of chaos. It needs no armor, because it has become its own shield. Joe Dispenza teaches that when you change your internal state, the quantum field changes its response. And that is strength. Not the domination of the world, but the harmonization of the inner field. Not control, but coherence. It is the moment when pain and faith coexist, and still you choose to remain present. It is when the mind wants to run, but the heart decides to stay. The cells of your body already know what it means to defy the impossible. They carry the memory of every time you thought you wouldn't make it, and still did. That is the silent alchemy of strength. Every scar is a victory etched into your skin. The body remembers what the mind forgets and calls you back to center. There, where fear dissolves into clarity and despair becomes rhythm, exists a power that needs no circumstance. You never gain strength, you simply stop denying it. It has always been the substance of your being, the same pulse that moves oceans and stars. Life, generous as it is, only creates situations that force you to remember. And when you finally recognize that strength is not something to earn, but something to allow, everything that once broke you begins to refine you. The world stops testing you and starts reflecting you. There is an invisible moment between chaos and clarity, and that is where creation happens. Most people collapse at that point, believing they're being destroyed when in fact they're being refined. The universe does not punish, it recalibrates. Everything that disintegrates around you is simply falling out of frequency. Nothing is lost, only returned to the field until it can resonate at the same tone you've chosen to sustain. The quantum field responds to subtle choices, not to dramatics. It does not read desperation, it reads vibrational decision. And every time you choose to interpret collapse as refinement, you change the signature of your entire field. Pain stops being noise and becomes a tuning tool. Chaos turns into symphony because the observer, you, stopped identifying with destruction and began participating in creation. Bruce Lipton explains that every cell reacts to the emotional environment you transmit. When you vibrate fear, the body closes. When you vibrate conscious surrender, the body opens. That inner movement is the difference between collapsing a reality of loss or of expansion. The moment you choose to see fire as a forge, your biology begins to emit a different kind of light, literally. The cells receive the command that they are not dying, they are being reborn. Refinement is the process through which the field aligns you with what you asked for. It is not punishment, it is response. You asked for clarity, confusion arrived to clear the excess. You asked for freedom, farewells came to unbind you. You asked for power, mirrors appeared to make you remember who you are. Everything is working. It always has been. What changes is the meaning you assign to the movement. To be refined is to choose to stand even when the ground seems to dissolve. It is understanding that for gold to shine, fire is inevitable. The difference lies in perception. Those who believe they are being destroyed resist. Those who understand they are being shaped surrender. And surrender is the code of rebirth. In the moment you accept refinement, the field recognizes vibrational maturity. And what looked like an ending reveals itself as a beginning. What looked like loss reveals itself as release. And what looked like chaos reveals itself as the very force aligning you with your purest self. Pain is the portal no one wants to cross, yet it's the only one that leads home. It arrives unannounced, disarms the ego, tears certainty apart, and forces a pause. And in the silence that remains, something sacred happens. You begin to hear what has always been trying to speak beneath the noise. Pain is the language of the field when you ignore the subtle signals. It is not punishment, it is translation. It is how life pushes you back into alignment. When the mind wants to escape, the body holds. It stores what you refuse to feel and turns it into symptoms, tension, exhaustion. But the body is not the enemy. It is the map to liberation. Every physical contraction is a vibrational message saying, there is still something here asking for love. Instead of resisting pain, ask what it wants to reveal. The answer is almost always simple, but simplicity demands presence. Joe Dispenza says suffering is the chemical addiction of the old self. Every dense emotion repeated becomes a substance the body learns to produce. And when you try to change, the nervous system begs for what it once knew, until fear feels safer than the unknown. That's what the crossing is, an energetic withdrawal. You are not losing control. You are being freed from the need to control. Every time you choose to breathe through the pain, something reorganizes in the invisible. Cells that once vibrated in defense begin to emit signals of regeneration. The frequency of the body shifts, the field responds, and new realities start to draw near. Pain, once seen as the enemy, reveals itself as the master, a reminder that light does not enter through perfection, but through the cracks. The wound becomes passage, and the weight turns into expansion. The portal of pain doesn't take you to a new place, it takes you to a new perception. You cross it and realize you were never lost, only asleep inside an old version of yourself. On the other side, there is no longer the same chase, the same rush, the same guilt. There is lightness, presence, a kind of power that doesn't need noise. Because pain has fulfilled its purpose, to bring you wholly back to the now, where the field recognizes you again. There comes a moment in the journey when you realize you are not returning to a new place. You are returning to yourself. It is not a reunion with something distant, but the recognition of something that was never gone. This is the return to the higher self, the consciousness that observes everything, yet is not confused by anything, the silent voice behind all voices, the steady presence beneath every role. It is the instant when the search ends, and being simply remembers. For years, you believed you were the character, the body, the mind, the story, but the character changes, the observer does not. The higher self is the space between one thought and another, the field that holds every emotion without being affected by any of them. It is the stillness that existed before fear and will remain after it. Recognizing this place is the true awakening, not an escape from the human experience, but a complete embrace of it. Bruce Lipton speaks of how every cell responds to the environment of consciousness it is immersed in. When the mind anchors in coherence, the entire body reorganizes. It is as if the cells receive a new code, a new instruction of light. The higher self is this code, the original field that reminds the body of its own divinity. When you access it, biology harmonizes, frequency rises, and life flows once again like a tuned symphony. Returning to the higher self is silent, yet unmistakable. You begin to laugh at situations that once drained you, to feel peace where urgency once lived. Not because the circumstances changed, but because the center stabilized. The external reality becomes merely a reflection of inner serenity. And in that serenity, the entire universe seems to conspire to match the rhythm of your heart. To return to the higher self is to stop trying to be and simply allow being. It is resting in the awareness that you do not need to protect yourself from life, because you are life experiencing itself. It is dissolving fear into a love that has never ceased. It is remembering that you are not separate from the whole. You are the whole in temporary form. And when that remembrance settles, the game changes. The seeker disappears, and the creator awakens. Every authentic transformation requires a cocoon, that space between what dies and what has not yet been born. It is not a comfortable place. It is a maple's interval where the old no longer works and the new has not yet taken form. The cocoon is the womb of metamorphosis. From the outside, it looks like silence. From the inside, it is revolution. Old structures dissolve, certainties lose shape, and the being learns, for the first time, how to exist without guarantees. The caterpillar doesn't improve, it dissolves. There is no negotiation with the process. For the wings to form, the old body must disintegrate. Likewise, your old self will not be perfected. It will be dissolved so that the version who already remembers how to fly can emerge. This is the paradox of evolution. You only become when you agree not to be for a while. The cocoon is the laboratory of trust. Everything that was once familiar goes silent. Friends drift away, plans no longer fit, identities lose their meaning. But silence is fertile. Within it, the field recalibrates frequencies, like a software being updated without the user's interference. The more you try to escape too early, the more the new reality delays. It is not punishment, it is synchronicity. The universe waits for the vibrational stability of the new being before opening the wings. Bruce Lipton reminds us that biology is shaped by its vibrational environment. The cocoon is precisely this shift in environment, an isolated field of recalibration. Within it, your physical body learns to operate at a new frequency. Your mind releases old loops, and your energy reorganizes into harmony. The discomfort you feel is simply your cells realigning with the vibration of freedom. It is not collapse, it is expansion compressed, ready to be born. When the cocoon finally breaks open, nothing is as it was before, and that is the greatest gift. You do not return to the world as someone who took a pause, but as someone carrying a new code of existence. The same places look different, the same voices sound new, even time obeys a different rhythm. Because rebirth is not a restart, it is a new frequency operating the same universe. And so the flight is not an escape, it is the natural celebration of one who finally remembered what they always were. There comes a moment, it always comes, when life places a mirror before you. Not to judge you, but to invite you to decide. Continue being the reflection of the past, or become the expression of the future. This is the moment of choice. It is not grand or dramatic. Often it is just a sigh, a pause in the middle of a thought. But it is at this microscopic point that entire universes split. Choosing is not fighting what was. It is simply stopping feeding what has already ended. It is allowing the old to dissolve, not out of rejection, but gratitude. Because your previous self, the one who fell, who tried, who resisted, was the fertile soil where the new is now being born. The choice is recognizing that pain is not the enemy, that fear is only an announcement of expansion, and that surrender is the highest form of courage. The real choice happens in silence, when the heart says now, and the body finally listens. In the quantum field, this decision is an instant collapse. Reality bends to the vibration of one who steps into a new state. The universe does not wait for proof. It responds to frequency. When you declare I am, everything that is not dissolves. This is the power of the conscious observer, the creator who no longer waits for signs but becomes the sign. But every choice carries a sacrifice, to let go of the former identity. You cannot hold on to the cocoon and fly at the same time. There comes a moment when you must release the emotional ground of what was familiar, even if it feels like loss. And when you release it, something surprising happens. The emptiness you feared reveals itself as fullness. The field immediately fills the open space with new possibilities, because the universe detests a vacuum, and consciousness occupies what fear abandons. The moment of choice is, at its core, the moment of remembrance. To remember that you were never small, never separate, never broken. You merely forgot for a while and lived as someone who needed to search for what was already within. Now, there is no search, there is embodiment. You become what you always were, light in human form, consciousness experiencing itself through matter. And when that remembrance stabilizes, choice is no longer an action, it becomes a state. Everything you have lived, every mistake, every pause, every pain, was never a detour. It was the exact path through which the universe guided you back to yourself. Nothing was wasted, everything was refined. Loss was purification, silence was reset, chaos was birth. And what emerges now, from the ashes and the broken certainties, is not a new you, it is the true you. The true you never left. It waited, patiently, while the character ran in all directions, trying to be found. It waited for the moment when the noise would fade, and the voice of the soul would once again be heard. It waited for the body, tired of fighting, to finally relax and remember its original vibration, the one before fear, before effort, before comparison. Because beneath all roles, there has always been something unshakable: presence, consciousness, pure life. Bruce Lipton would say that even the cells listen to this return, that biology reorganizes when the mind aligns with love. Joe Dispenza would call it coherence, the point at which the heart, the brain, and the field dance to the same frequency. But mystics of every age have called it remembrance. To remember that there is nothing to seek because nothing was ever lost. To remember that there is nothing to prove because worth was never in dispute. To remember that the divine is not distant, it breathes through you. Rebirth is not about reinventing yourself, it is about unveiling yourself. It is the instant when the cocoon opens and silence becomes sound. Sound becomes form, and form once again serves the light. It is when the human and the divine meet within the same body and decide never again to separate. Pain fulfills its purpose and recedes. Love takes the lead, and life then ceases to be a search and becomes a continuous response. Now, place your hand on your heart and breathe. Feel. There is no distance between you and the whole, only forgetting or remembering. And in this very moment, you are remembering. You are not returning to the light. You are the light returning to itself. And the universe, all around you, only reflects this remembrance, with new beginnings, new encounters, and a peace that depends on nothing else.